Hey y'all, I'm Jonathan Folsom, Technical Seed Agronomist for Winfield United Seed. Today we're going to talk about wheat streak mosaic virus and why it's so important for us to burn down, start clean before we plant a wheat crop. So the wheat streak mosaic virus is found around the world and it can actually survive on many different grass species. And because of that, it can be found any time of the year, not just during the wheat growing season. Wheat streak mosaic virus is transmitted by the wheat curl mite, and the wheat curl mite will begin feeding on the wheat in the fall after emergence, and that's when the infection happens. But many times you don't see the results, you don't see the symptomology of the wheat streak mosaic virus until later in the spring when the weather warms up and the wheat begins to grow really well. So that the virus is much more active during the warmer weather. So because of that, during a hot spring, a warm growing season, you'll see the wheat streak mosaic virus could be more devastating versus in a cooler, more ideal wheat growing scenario in the spring. The virus may be somewhat muted and somewhat not as, you may not see the effects of it quite as much. So if it's found all around the world across many different grasses, how do we protect our wheat crop from the wheat streak mosaic virus? Well, that's fairly easy. We've got three great options to choose from. Three great management tips. Number one, let's start clean. Let's get rid of any opportunities for a host plant nearby to be harboring that wheat curl mite as a refuge, and we don't want that to be the green bridge straight into our wheat crop. So 2 weeks prior to planting, at least 2 weeks prior to planting, we're gonna destroy any volunteer cereals. So whether that's wheat, barley, oats, any kind of a grass that's growing out in the field, make sure you start clean, get it burned down at least 2 weeks before you're ready to plant. And that'll eliminate a lot of the wheat curl mites. Now, second option is you could always delay the planting late into the fall. Late fall, when the weather's cooled off quite a bit and the wheat curl mite's not as active. So that basically, at that point, there's less time for the wheat curl mite to travel across the field and infect more acres. And so if there's less infection, and then remember in the cooler weather, the wheat streak mosaic virus isn't as active, so the infection won't be as bad. And then third option is plant a resistant variety. And this is a great tool, especially if you can't control your field, what's around you, or maybe there's a cover crop nearby that you don't want to terminate. Maybe you can't for some reason, maybe you're inheriting something and you don't have 2 weeks to start clean. Well, number one, you always need to start clean. That could be a shot of glyphosate, application of glyphosate, right when you plant. At least you'll get rid of a lot of the volunteer and get rid of much of the problem. But start clean, plant later. There's varieties that have good resistance to the wheat curl mite. And there's varieties that have good resistance to the wheat streak mosaic virus. And there's varieties that have good resistance to both. And I'll tell you that cropland has some varieties that have some resistance to the wheat streak mosaic virus. But I will tell you that a good variety just cannot overcome poor management. So let's not use poor management. Let's start clean. If you need to, delay planting later into the fall. And then that's going to ensure that you have less of a risk of encountering that wheat streak mosaic virus. So as you can see, this variety here beside me has really good tolerance to the wheat streak mosaic virus compared to this other variety right next to it. Just they both got impacted at the same time. The wheat curl mites came in off the volunteer wheat on the corner, the dryland corner of this irrigated pivot. This irrigated circle here has this variety trial on it, and so basically they worked their way from the southwest to the northeast, just being carried along with the wind. And with the wind, came the mites, and with the mites came the wheat streak mosaic virus. So let's not put ourselves in this situation where we've got potential for 100% yield loss because of the wheat streak mosaic virus. Let's start clean, get rid of the volunteer that's a green bridge to bring in the wheat curl mites. We could plant later, and we could pick a tolerant variety. So for Cropland and Winfield United Seed, I'm Jonathan Folsom. Thanks for watching.